What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the Off the Bench Podcast Network. Before we get to today's show, let us take a moment to pass along a reminder, a safety message here during this holiday season. And before we get to today's show, let's take a moment to remind ourselves of that with our special guest, Lieutenant Jim Betancourt. With the introduction, I pass it off to my co-host and friend, Raider Jim Martinez. Take it away, Raider Jim.
Thank you, First Report. Yeah, this is Raider Jim from the Off the Bench podcast. Everything we talk about football, basketball, gaming, how to make your bets, place your bets. And the one thing we always keep in mind is being responsible at everything we do. And what better way to introduce a very good friend of mine, Lieutenant Jim Betancourt from the California Highway Patrol, to talk about the holiday responsibilities of making sure when we're out on the road that we exercise great caution at all times. Officer Jim, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you extending the time. And please give us some of your information and tips that we can follow.
Well, I thank you guys very much for having me on this show. In my plus 21 years of being a California Highway Patrol officer, I can tell you, unfortunately, I've seen more blood, guts, gore, and grime than any one man should have to see in their entire life. And which is a common theme in a lot of these crashes is unfortunately driving under the influence of alcohol. Especially during the holiday season, we see a lot of crashes that involve DUI, whether that's alcohol, prescription drugs, you name it. That's the type of stuff that we see. So what we ask is that people act responsibly, designate a driver, have a plan before you go out and drink and drive, or just don't drink and drive, period. Make sure you have a person that you can call, or an Uber or whatever. Nowadays, there's no excuse for driving under the influence of alcohol. Unfortunately, over the last several years, in 2018, over 3,800 people lost their lives because of DUI collisions in the state of California. Over Christmas period last year, we arrested 271 people statewide for that. And let me just say this, DUI is not a victimless crime, right? People die, people get hurt, people's lives change forever. And we don't want anybody listening to this podcast, to be a statistic. We want you to celebrate the holidays with your friends and family. We want you to be able to have a good time. We are in unprecedented times, and we understand that if there's a lot of stressed out people, there's a lot of things that are happening right now throughout the state, but we want you to be safe. We want you to have a plan. We want you to enjoy the holidays. Don't drink and drive. Don't put yourself in a situation that's going to change your life forever. And believe me when I say this, if you get in a crash after drinking and driving, if you hurt somebody, if you kill somebody, your life and the life of your family, friends, coworkers will be forever changed, and it's just not worth it.
Thank you very much. And yeah, so for everybody who listens to the Off the Bench podcast, if you want sound advice, if you want a sure bet, you just got the best betting tip of the holiday season and throughout the year. Don't drink, don't drive. Keep your money in your pocket. Don't give it to a bail bondsman. Don't give it to your insurance company. Officer Jim, thank you so much. I did want to ask one question about this. Do you know, given the situation with COVID, et cetera, are they still going to have some of the free programs that are out there, like transit with the free trolley rides, some of the Ubers, the taxis, the tow services?
So I'm not sure if that's still going to be in effect. I can tell you AAA right now is not providing rides to their members if they call them on the side of the road because of the COVID protocols. So a lot of those free services, with the exception of Uber that are still in service, and Lyft, are going to be shut down. So you may be limited in the amount of options that you have during this holiday season, which makes it more important than ever to have a plan and to not put yourself in a situation where you hurt or kill somebody. In fact, unfortunately, last night we just had a Caltrans contractor killed on the 94.
I saw that.
By a DUI driver. And it just really brings home, so close to the holidays, how somebody's life can change in an instant, and it's just not worth it.
So folks, there you have it again. Officer Jim, thank you so much for the time, the opportunity, and the information. Listeners, don't bet against the house on this one. Okay, listen to what Officer Jim has to say.
Definitely. And thank you, Lieutenant Betancourt, and all that you do, and all of your the men and women who are there to keep us safe every single day. And once again, I echo everything. Look, Lyft and Uber, there is no excuse. If you can afford to go out and get drunk, you can afford your $20 ride home. So make no excuses, be safe, and most importantly, enjoy the holidays. So once again, from all of us here at the Off the Bench Podcast Network and the CHP, have a happy and safe
Happy holidays, everybody.
and a happy new year. What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the Off the Bench Podcast Network. It is time for a New Year's Eve edition of the Call to Post here on the Off the Bench Podcast Network. Myself, of course, Brandon First. You can find me at First Report, FERST, on Twitter. And of course, my co-host, couldn't do this without him, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find him at Raider Jim 1090. Mr. Martinez, happy new year, and how are you doing today?
Well, happy new year to you and to anybody that's listening to us today. And I'm doing great. It's the last day of the year. We finally get to say goodbye to 2020, which has been kind to nobody, to say the least. So let's make it the next, cross our fingers, 7.5 hours, and on the West Coast be done with it. And what we have learned out and what we've brought to the people who listen to this portion of the podcast, horse racing is year round.
Amen. And it's I mean, out of all the sports, it had a month where everyone kind of had to take a deep breath and figure out how it was going to get rolling. But this has pretty much been going longer than any other sport. And a lot of it is because a lot of the lucrative is the technology. You can go on TVG as you speak right now and bet anywhere in the world.
Right.
Once again, we're not sponsored. If they're listening, feel free to give me a call. But no, it's just the way it is. The technology, you don't have to be at the track these days to love to enjoy horse racing. Obviously, as we've said, we'll get it out of the way now. 2021 Breeders' Cup, myself and Raider Jim will be at Del Mar one way or another.
That's right. Even if it's just, even if we're in the parking lot and they try to physically remove us, we'll be there.
Exactly. We'll be pounding on the white roofs,
Right.
trying to pay somebody to just be able to look out their balcony if we
There you
absolutely
go.
have to down the backstretch. But anyways, getting to today's show, we'll start with a bit of news. Really incredibly surprising news. I was Raider Jim sent me the screenshot of the news. It was about 2 or 3 days ago of Tiz the Law, of course Belmont winner. Odd year, but of course the Belmont was the first crown of the Triple Crown, the first jewel, I should say, of the Triple Crown, and it was a New York horse who won the Belmont, which is a story in itself. Struggled in the Preakness, just lost out to Swiss Skydiver, who had a better day, and then in the Breeders' Cup Classic didn't run its best race. But the news of Tiz the Law going to stud, retired to stud, has really kind of, it opened my eyes, or not opened my eyes, but definitely raised my eyebrows in terms that we expected this horse to have a pretty big career and definitely a fantastic 4-year-old year. What are your thoughts on Tiz the Law heading to the Breeders' Barn?
Yeah, if COVID be damned, Tiz the Law came out of the gate first quarter and was just lighting the tracks on fire. I mean, Kentucky Derby points, just racking them up like nobody's business, just blowing away all the competition, as we saw in the Preakness. It was the Preakness, and just took off like nobody's business. And then all of a sudden there was a disappointing run, and then there was the Breeders' Cup disappointing run, and you kind of question what happened, because he was the strong favorite to actually, before COVID hit, the big talk was, we got it. We got a horse that's going to win the Triple Crown. And if you would have talked to Barclay Tagg back in February, Barclay would have told you, absolutely, this horse can do it. And so it wasn't COVID's fault, but the rescheduling and everything else. But it was what you said you saw on social media is it was a vet suggested and imposed situation where they said this horse should not race anymore. What the condition is, we aren't really sure, and we're not going to, speculate on that. But it was this was a vet's decision to put Tiz the Law out of the racing game. And you're right. In 2021, they expected Tiz the Law to be the, back into form and be the 4-year-old that was just going to burn up every track that he touched. So, uh, really, really a sad thing to see happen. A competitor like that did not get to meet his potential, and but will go on and will sire some good ones, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
and as we have talked about, uh, it comes up in the storylines throughout all the podcasts. As we talk, there's money to be made in the breeding game, and Tiz the Law has done enough to really get a good price for any of the children that he sires.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just thinking about some of the horses in the last month or so that have gone into the breeding barn. That, hey, that those are other ones. But the breeding stable now seems to kind of be another way to make money. And Tiz the Law will be, like you said, no different. It is sad,
Absolutely.
but I look at it on another side of it, that the technology and the way, as far as we've come, that 10 years ago, who knows, if this would have been found. I don't know. I'm not a vet in tech. I don't know, but I can guarantee you that where technology is now in the horse racing game, vet wise, is taken steps further in, like, any
Right.
medical field. And these findings, um 10, 20 years ago, might not have been found until it was too late.
Right.
And I'll
It's
tell
that
you
same
what,
thing where, years ago it was, if you're going to have your tonsils out, you're going to spend the night, maybe 2 nights, or if you're going to have your
exactly.
appendix out, same thing. Now you need your appendix out. They shove you in the door, and then you're like on the grocery line conveyor belt, in one
Yeah.
door, out the other one, same day, see you, come back later. So yeah, the technology is definitely better. And for the sake of the animals, which we talk about a lot, the safety and soundness of the animals, I'm glad to see that. So true, it's sad as a fan who wants to see that horse go out. It's just such a beautiful thing to watch Tiz the Law run, but I'd rather see him safe than hurt.
Yeah, and even to just kind of take it a step further, and maybe this is just my maybe pessimistic, or just looking at how things would go, is Tiz the Law, if something were to happen catastrophic, folks, it wouldn't happen in an optional claiming race. It would happen on NBC, and it would not be good
Right.
for sport of horse racing. Now, obviously, I'm not saying, oh, if a horse goes down in an optional claiming race, blah blah. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just pointing out that there would be a lot more eyes on Tiz the Law in those situations. But
Correct.
I think the big part of it is they caught it early, and they made the right choice. I don't think anybody forced these people, or the ownership group, or the partnership, to do this, but obviously they've made the right choice. And I go back to the 99.9% of the people in this game, I think, are in it for the horses, and
Correct.
the welfare of the animals. So best of luck to Tiz the Law. I know that here in a couple years, 2 or 3 years, Raider Jim, we're going to be seeing some maiden special weights, and
Absolutely.
Tiz the Law in the sire, and our ears are going to perk up, and the pun was intended there. Moving on to the weekend. I got some stuff on the East Coast there, Raider Jim. I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, a couple races to keep your eyes on. Don't have the fields down or the favorites, but take a look at the tracks and see. At Aqueduct on Saturday, race 8, you've got the Gravesend Stakes, $100,000. It's a small stakes, but it's going to be a good one. And also Gulfstream race 10, the Mucho Macho Man Stakes is going to be taking place, also $100,000. Check out both of those races. They're going to be fun to watch, fun to bet on, and you'll see some good horses in those races. And I guarantee you that both of those, the Gravesend and the Mucho Macho Man Stakes, they will continue to have those and run those, and you'll eventually see them move up to grade 3, grade 2.
Definitely. And that's, the kind of what January is. The horse racing calendar ends November 8th, or whatever that Sunday is, pretty much when the Breeders'
Right.
Cup wraps up. Everything else kind of resets. The Kentucky Derby, obviously, the qualifications start a little earlier, but this is when we start to build towards it. And coming up this weekend, we don't have the field for the Santa Ynez Stakes at Santa Anita, but I was doing a little reading up on that, and that's kind of a buildup for something I actually just I guess stumbled upon. It's called the Triple Tiara, and it's essentially the Triple Crown, but for fillies, you're talking about, the Black Eyed Susan, stuff later on in the year, which the final crown in that tiara, if you will be actually the Kentucky Oaks, which is a race that we will cover very, very closely if it goes off, hopefully on time, fingers crossed, Friday before the Derby. But that's something to keep an eye on. But the races that we do have are on the form for this weekend. They'll be going off Saturday. We got two races. The first one will be race 7 at Santa Anita. It is the San Gabriel Stakes, 1.125 miles on the turf, going a long ways. The first horse that jumps out to me, I believe, is the favorite and is probably going to go pretty close, is Count Again. This is a horse that's pretty much won at this grade, won the Seabiscuit last month. This is a horse that's in this class and has won at this class.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a Phil D'Amato horse, and what can you say? You got these West Coast trainers, and they don't train just on the West Coast, but Brandon and I are probably a little more familiar because of the Santa Anita runs, the Del Mar runs. But Phil D'Amato, he just puts winners out there. Juan Hernandez is going to be riding. The E-speeds on Count Again are the last 3 races, 111, 105, 106. This horse can run, and it's going to run on Saturday. And you're right, definitely going to go off as the favorite. There's a couple 4-to-1 horses out there, both Richard Balta's horses. One is Bob and Jackie, and the other one is called Next Shares. I don't know if you happen to take a look at either one of those. But Next Shares also, last 3 outings, 109, 108, 109. This is going to be a fun race to watch because these horses that are favored have the better odds on them. They are used to the distance, so they can run far and fast.
Yeah, I actually those were my kind of two in the money, contenders. Next Shares for me, I go back to I think it's the Tourist Mile at Keeneland in September. This horse ran a 111. I mean, that is flying. And guess what? Didn't win. Lost out to Flavius, a horse that actually Count Again beat in the Seabiscuit handicap. Next Shares finished 3rd in that same race. When I look at Bob and Jackie going through the past performances, the one thing Bob and Jackie is going to be very, very excited about is that this race does not have Mo Forza in it. The only time Bob and Jackie hasn't won a race going back to October of 2018, if that race hasn't been won by Bob and Jackie, it's been won by Mo Forza. So Bob and Jackie's got to be kind of, maybe smelling around going, hey, that big bully isn't here. Maybe I can run it down. And the last horse I do want to talk about, as I just check it on my notes, is the 7 horse. The numbers are 6-1 right now. It's Bowie's Hero. This is a 7-year-old who's made over almost 1.6 million. It didn't run incredibly well in the Seabiscuit, like I said, with Count Again and Next Shares. But this is a horse that has been on the grade 1, 2, and 3 levels pretty much its entire career. Always has a run in it, and just keep an eye on it. It's definitely an in the money contender. 6-1. I think the 3 horses we just talked about is going to get more money, so I expect that 6-1 to maybe balloon up a little bit. So keep an eye on where that finishes up. Just a horse that I think the first 3 we talked about, I mean, you could probably find yourself a trifecta box and feel good about that. But if you do think there is going to be one that sticks its nose and blows everything up, I think Bowie's Hero is that veteran that can just run it down.
And the other one that might do that is the number 8 horse, which has started to get good press last week, and even this week has a good, they did a nice small write-up on it, and that is Cleopatra Strike. Cleopatra Strike is an 8-year-old, used to be trained by Phil D'Amato, now trained by Bob Hess Jr., and is going to be ridden by Kent DeSormo. And what Bob Hess has said is this horse has not trained this good in a long, long time, is in 100% peak shape right now and ready to contend. Cleopatra Strike has a winning pedigree, has come in second barely, in one of the big stakes races it ran in, and has also won stakes races. I think it came in second in the John Henry, one of the John Henry named races.
Yeah.
And Kent DeSormo, is back, and that ties in kind of with one of the things I wanted to mention. Last Saturday, the 26th, it was the third race. It was a $24,000 race at Santa Anita's opening weekend. But the important part to that was Kent DeSormo made his return after a long, challenging summer for him. He checked himself into rehab, got himself out of rehab. He was back on a horse that was trained by his brother last week. And it even put a smile on my face when I went back and looked at the program, because he brought Next Revolt, the number 6 horse, in the money and showed. So congratulations to Kent. And that's good and it's bad. It's good for us and it's bad for the jockeys he's going to ride against, because when he's on his game, he's on his game. And that is going to play very much into Cleopatra's Strike chances to finish in the money this coming Saturday.
Yeah, and that's a great call with Cleopatra Strikes. I was just actually looking her over. Oh, I'm sorry, him over. Yeah, sorry. This is a horse that ran actually last year in the 2019, or I'm sorry, not last year, 2 years ago in the 2019
Yes.
Gabriel, and lost out 2 next shares. And this is also a horse that, going back to that 2019 year, in September, actually, you talked about the John Henry, I think it's a turf club, beat United. And United's, a big time horse. Now, I know that was 2 years ago. We all know how different the world is now, but I mean, that's an opportunity for this horse. We know that this horse knows what it's like to get to that line. Great call there. Those are some ideas to toss around there. Race 8 is it's easy and difficult. Different reasons why. You have the grade 3 sham stakes going a mile on the dirt for 3-year-olds. The heavy favorite here is Life is Good. You have the absolute Hall of Fame duo of Bob Baffert and Mike Smith. You also have a Into Mischief offspring, and a fact that this horse cost $500,000 to breed. And it's in its debut in November at Del Mar in a maiden special weight 57K, which is a very high class for those maiden special weights. It won by just an even 10 lengths. So this is a horse that's getting ready to start its march towards what is expected. Obviously, $500,000 or over $500,000. We have to imagine that this is going to be a horse that's going to be something, and this is probably its first big test.
Yeah, and this is one of those races where if you do decide you have to put money on the small field, you're not going to make it on the favorite unless you put down a ton of money. And so your bets are going to be on, you might want to box the field if you want to do that, and hope that one of the long shots ends up coming in first and your favorite comes in second, or trifecta, box that trifecta and hope you have the right combination. But again, unless you're going to put down a big chunk of change on a win with the favorite, it's going to take quite a bit of money.
Definitely. And there are 2 horses that just kind of caught my eye. The first one was Parnelli. Look, it's 5-2. Don't quite know where that number is going to go with the 2-5 morning line. Anyone's guess at this point. The only reason I kind of go to this horse by default, it's the only horse that's ran at this length, or, with all due respect to Wasperant, in this field. So I kind of give it a bit of an edge there, and it did win at a mile to break its maiden, actually last time out at Del Mar, and ran gamely against Spielberg. And now, of course, we've had our talks about Spielberg, but hey, finally got the job done in November back in the day, and Parnelli was right there with the neck. The last one is Uncle Boogie. And the reason I'm going to bring him up is because you actually brought him up in the back when we talked about the Bob Hope.
Yeah.
This was a horse that came off at about 4.5, 5-1 and ran well. Red Flag ran away from everybody, but Uncle Boogie was the next closest. So this is also a horse that's been in the money all 3 times and never finished third. It's always, two places and a win. So that's something to keep an eye on. Those are 2 horses to, like Raider Jim said, just you're not going to get a whole lot of money unless you were throwing a lot of money on the favorite in this race. I honestly think this could maybe get to 3-5 for that horse, maybe 4-5, just because people are just going to be so turned off by that morning line.
Right.
But we'll see. I mean, usually you see a 2-5 morning line. That's a race that I'm like, okay, I'll just enjoy that horse and see how it runs.
Right. And that's a good point though. It's good to watch that and then track that horse for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Because you're going to find that those combinations, or you're going to see, if he runs against stiffer competition, then are his odds going to change? It becomes an even money horse, things like that.
exactly. And look, this horse cost as much as it did. It will not, and look the way it did. It is not going to stay in the grade 3 ranks too long unless we see something this weekend. But yeah, so that's what is on tap for Santa Anita. Like I said, the Santa Ynez. I'm sorry, I'm completely for a Southern California, and I'm absolutely butchering that. But those past performances aren't out. But as always, follow us on Twitter. Raider Jim is absolutely fantastic on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, whenever those races are coming out. He's fantastic about getting those picks out and those thoughts for you to be able to go into your whatever account you need to get those picks in quickly. And now it is time for the horse profile of the week. Last week, we talked about Nashville. Look, didn't run terribly well for a big time favorite in last week in the Santa Anita, or at Santa Anita, I should say. But we do have a horse that's a little more well known, and a horse that, to be fair, look, last time out, underwhelmed. But is a horse that I don't think anybody's giving up on. I know we aren't. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to Raider Jim, who will introduce us, or at least get us better acquainted to our horse profile of the week.
Yeah, and this would be Jackie's Warrior. And if you look on a list of who are the fastest 2-year-olds that are out there right now, Jackie's Warrior is going to be on the top of the list, if definitely in the top 3, but probably going to be the leader. The only dig against Jackie's Warrior right now is they're starting to call him a one-turn horse, meaning if he's got to go distance, the question, it's just a question, does he lose a little bit of his speed and his fire if he has to go longer than, the 6 lengths, the 7 legs type of a thing. And if you look on the resume for the second half of the year, back in June, first place at 5 furlongs, first place after that at 6 furlongs, first place at 7 furlongs. And this is what got people real excited and leaning forward in their seats and starting to stand up real quick when Jackie's Warrior was coming to the gate. And then, of course, at Belmont in October, ran a mile, came in first, and then was headed, and that was the Champagne Stakes, a grade 1, was headed to the Breeders' Cup weekend. And both Brandon and I touted this horse as, this is the guy to beat. This is the fastest horse we've ever seen, and didn't finish in the money. And you look back, and was there a little bit of stumble at the gate? I don't know. But again, there it was. What was the difference? Mile and a 16th, furthest the horse had ever been asked to run against real stiff competition. And that was the chance to, stamp your place in the book. Yeah, I'm the fast. I'm the one to beat, and didn't do that. And so that's why the question is, was a mile it? Was that the furthest we want to ask this horse to go that fast? Because we're talking great speeds out there. So, but going into 2021, still a horse to be reckoned with. Being trained by Steve Asmussen. So it's not Steven Asmussen. It's not like he's not under good care. And he's going to be trained well. And if anybody's going to get the most out of Jackie's Warrior every time he hits the track, it's going to be Steve Asmussen. So keep your eye on Jackie's Warrior. I think there's going to be money to be made with that horse. And as we get closer to May, you're going to be seeing that name more and more and more.
Yeah. And another part of it too, if you're going to have a hiccup, or if you're going to have, anybody, oh, well, what happened here? Hey, it's the Breeders' Cup. It's, was that the juvenile mile, I would assume, or
yeah.
Okay. So correct. Was that Nick's Go, or maybe
the Breeders' Cup juvenile mile and a 16?
Yeah. So that's the stiffest competition, not only that horse has faced, but every single horse that was in that field had faced. I mean, it's kind of like looking at a college quarterback go 12-0 and then face Alabama and go, oh, well, you threw 2 interceptions. Well, yeah, it was against Alabama in the national title game. I think we could give him a pass. But at the same time, that was a horse that going into Breeders' Cup weekend, as a principal, I don't really bet small numbered horses in terms of, whatever 3 to 5 or 4 to 5, whatever it was. I broke my rule for Jackie's Warrior. So that just kind of tells you how highly I thought of that horse.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not going to bet that low number again, but I don't also believe that this is it. This is the last we've seen of Jackie's Warrior. I really do think, like you said, around May, or maybe, when we're looking over in the next couple weeks or months, those standings, I do believe Jackie's Warrior will at least be in shouting distance of somewhere.
Oh, and any of the Breeders' Cup Challenge races you see Jackie Warrior show up into, because you will see Jackie's Warrior unless something catastrophic happens. I would bet that you will see Jackie's Warrior in one of the Breeders' Cup races again in November.
Agreed. And once again, number 2 of the day, myself and Raider Jim will be there.
There you are. I'll be trackside to see it.
Yeah. Awesome. So I believe that's all we have here for this episode of Call to Post. Final thoughts there, Raider Jim, the final call to post of the year 2020.
Final thoughts for the Call to Post podcast. First of all, it's been a real pleasure to be part of this since we started it back in the spring. Thank you very much. It's just an honor to be doing this with you. And folks, like I said at the beginning, the one thing, COVID has affected everybody, every sport, all walks of life, and horse racing wasn't exempt. And horse racing was not exempt from even the other civic and civil things and civil unrest that was going on. One of the greatest interviews I got to do this year was with Reverend Tim Finley out of Louisville, Kentucky. And that was going into what should have been the Kentucky Derby weekend, because they were trying to ask the founders of the Derby to please, could you back off on it this year with all the situation that was going on with the Breonna Taylor situation and the upheaval with the Black Lives Matter. So life was interrupted by COVID, not just on the restaurants and not just in football and not just basketball, and civil unrest hit everywhere. So really coming out of it is we all need to be respectful and understand that everybody's affected by anything like that. It knows no bounds. So be kind to one another. We made it through the year. We're going to have a better year going into 2021. Stay safe, and just a happy new year to everybody.
Amen. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Yeah, it's been a great time. Not only working with, Brandon, Coach Lupian and Brianna, but you as well, Raider Jim, everything that, all these Thursdays when we get to spend a couple hours together, kind of talking horse racing and college basketball. And then, of course, those Wednesdays we get to talk a little NFL. It is always a pleasure. And, it's not going to end anytime soon. It's just going to be on the other side of hopefully a much better year. And we got you covered all the way through. Like we said, hopefully that beautiful, beautiful weekend in November when we'll be live streaming from the Seaside Oval, as we call it here in San Diego. So once again, for Raider Jim, my name is Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the Off the Bench Podcast Network. Thank you all so much for listening to the Call to Post. Go have a happy new year, everybody. Be safe out there. Be safe tonight, tomorrow, every day, really, but don't do anything stupid. So be kind, be safe. And now time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody.